Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Just with Dara. It's the season premiere of season 4. I'm really excited for this episode. I promoted it a little bit on Instagram about how we're discussing accent discrimination, which you can also tell by the title. But before we actually get into it, before I introduce my guest, yes, plural, I want to go ahead and apologize for not releasing the episode yesterday on Saturday, April 2nd, like I originally planned to. I greatly apologize about that, but there are just like certain circumstances that didn't make that possible. But from now on, I do hope to have the normal every Saturday releasing an episode. So, yeah, so basically, I have my brother here on this episode, as well as the person who even um, inspired me to start this podcast in the first place and encouraged me to. And I would say my biggest supporter, my dad, is also on this episode with me. So that's pretty cool. And that's because with my brother's knowledge about it from like the classes that he's taken while he's in college now, and then also with my dad's own personal experiences, I felt like we could have this conversation to where it would like be more, I guess, um, useful, I guess, in a sense, and just more interesting guests to have someone with those personal experiences and then also have the like knowledge about it as well from both sides. So I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves. So, Dad, you can go ahead first.
All right. Thank you, Dara, for inviting me into your podcast. My name is Michael Bingabankole. I am a realtor, and just like uh, Dara said, I am a father. um, yeah, that's it. Anything else? You can ask me. I'm here to support. Thank you.
Okay, and then Deborah, you can go ahead now.
Thank you, Dara, for inviting me on your podcast. I'm honored to be here, honored to be a guest. My name is Dapo Bankole. I'm Dara older brother. I'm a senior in college right now, studying global studies with a minor in Spanish as well.
Okay, well, thank you guys so much. And so, that being said, I didn't say this earlier, but this episode idea did come from the fact that my brother, like we were talking about accent discrimination, how he had talked about that in one of his classes. We were kind of just discussing that, and then from there, I was kind of like, oh, that would be like a really good episode to have on the podcast. So I'll definitely say that it was, I guess, or like he's the one who spurred the idea, so I appreciate that. And so, for starters, I will give the definition of what accent discrimination is. Basically, I mean, it's pretty self explanatory, but according to WileyWalsh.com, it occurs when an employer makes an adverse employment decision based on an employee's accent. And then, for example, employer refuses to hire a qualified scientist because of their foreign accent, this could be considered as accent discrimination. And it's not only in the workforce, but just like with anything in general, if you lose certain opportunities because of the accent that you have that's not native to the you're in, that's where that term accent discrimination comes from. So I guess Dapo, do you want to like touch on certain things that were talked about in the class that you had that where you guys had this discussion? You can go ahead and do that.
All right, thank you. So I studied a little bit of accent discrimination in my language and culture course in school. And a little bit of what I learned about came from a document called Voices of America by Mary Matsuda. And she highlighted the fact that everyone has an accent, and the accent that a person has sort of carries the story of who they are and where they come from. Um, so there's no such thing as someone like having a weird accent or having an accent that's abnormal when everyone is just different in their accent as well as their culture that they grew up in just represents who they are as a person. But specifically, I remember talking about a case of a man named Manuel Fragante, who happens to be Filipino, and he has like a heavy Filipino accent. And he applied for a job at the DMV in Hawaii. He speaks English very clearly. He's very amazing at it. He even took a written test to get this job, and he surpassed everyone else. But when he was interviewed, the interviewers decided to judge him on like a interesting skill. They just decided to rate him like 1 out of 10 for a professional job instead of actually rating like his qualities and his skills and his resume. And they said that he had a heavy Filipino accent, and they put that on the document that they used to judge him. And then he found out later that he wasn't accepted for the job, and that's the only reason why they didn't accept him, just because he had a heavy Filipino accent. However, no one had any trouble understanding him. Everyone understood the English that he was speaking. There was no issue with how he could communicate with people. Their reasoning for not hiring him was that they felt as though his abilities would come into question when interacting with people in the DMV, that he wouldn't be able to work as well because of his accent. So, the man in this story, Fragante, he actually decided to sue them and take them to court. And even in the courtroom, he was the person that spoke the best English out of everyone that was there, including the judge. And still, his case was not won, only because the there's a specific law in the United States called Title 7, and under this it prevents discrimination, but people who have certain traits or qualities that might infringe on the workplace are allowed to be denied being hired. And that's kind of what happened in this case too. So it's a small little loophole where accent discrimination comes into place. And because of the way that someone speaks, or the way they sound, or even the way that they're perceived, they're automatically dismissed regardless of the abilities or traits that they have. And I think that it's just like a sad story, and not a lot of people are aware of it, and there's not a lot of light shed on accent discrimination. So I'm happy that this podcast here is able to like shed some light on it.
Yeah, of course. And with that law, that's Title 7 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which, like you said, although there's that law that where like it shouldn't happen, you shouldn't be discriminated against because of your accent or your foreign accent. Of course, it still happens, and I feel like that comes with everything. There are always like those sorts of like loopholes, um, with laws like that. But so, Dad, being that you came here as an immigrant in the 80s. You can specifically say which year later on. I forgot which year. But anyways, um, I was just gonna say, like, what type of experiences did you go through coming here and not having that American accent when you came here, and like what type of things did you face when you came here?
All right. So thank you for asking. I When I first came to America, I came to Washington D.C. and I remember the first time. Um, Obviously, I knew that I had a different accent. That was very clear. But I remember the first time someone said to me that you have an accent. Where are you from? And I said, you mean I have a different accent, correct? Because you have an accent too.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, no, I don't have an accent. And I said, okay, well, I'm from Nigeria. And I was 19 years old. So I had to think back, well, like, wait a minute. I have never heard somebody says you have a different accent. And I'm talking about in America, it's usually you have an accent, or I detected a little bit of an accent. And I would have to, of course, tell them my background each time. Um, but in most cases, when I was in DC, it was usually more like, I like your accent. I like your accent. Where you from? In California, it was the same thing. I like your accent. Where you from? However, in some part of the country that I've lived, it's not the same case. Um, some people frown at your accent. Um, they immediately, well, I'm going to speak personally. So I have been judged by my accent many times, um, because of the type of field that I am. I am a realtor. I've also worked in sales. I've worked in accounting. Um, and I've realized that when I go in for an interview, I usually get the job. But if it's a phone interview, this was before video interviews. If I happen to talk to them on the phone before actually going in for the interview, it's usually uh, not a good sign because because I have an accent. I have a see. I'm used to saying I have an accent now, instead of saying I have a different accent. So that kind of rubbed into me. I started believing that I have an accent, and everybody else in America that were born in America do not have an accent. Um, Even last week, when I was in Oakland with a friend of mine, we went into a restaurant, and my buddy said to the waitress that I detected an accent. Where are you from? And the waitress immediately said, I don't have an accent. And I thought that was very funny because most Americans do not think they have an accent. They think any foreign accent, it's an accent, which is different. We get it. But I don't think Americans realize that American accent is an accent, British accent is an accent, Nigerian accent is an accent, just like Dapo said earlier. So personally, I have experienced discrimination based on speaking on the phone before they get to see me. However, the moment they get to see me, I realize that I can compensate for that accent. Look, it's sometimes we just have to face the fact when you are with people that talk like you or maybe look like you feel a little more comfortable. When you're on the phone with someone that doesn't sound like you get weary. It's like, oh, wait a minute, who is this person? Right? Especially in my field as a realtor or as a salesperson, people usually want to feel comfortable with someone that talk like them. So I kind of understand in a way. However, I think it is important for all of us to know that we have an accent. So what I have done in the past is I would get someone to invite me in, let me come and sit with you. It is very important that I sit with people in my business. When I do sit with them, it's a different case because I can actually compensate for my accent by my character. By them putting a face to the voice makes a big difference. So um, I really, you know, going back to, I don't know if I should keep going or if I should stop here, but that's my take for now. Let me just stop there. That's my take.
You're fine. Um, okay, well, for that, and I say that I definitely think that a lot of Americans forget the fact that they too have an accent, like how you were saying, they just consider any accent that's not an American accent as, oh, okay, that's an accent, but no, I don't have an accent. I hear that all the time from like people in school and stuff. It's like, yeah, you still have an accent, just that it's not a foreign accent, so to speak. And then even within America, there are like different accents. Like there are southern accents, there are northern accents, there are valley accents, and so people will by those. But I feel like when people don't fall into any of those, or maybe some more groups as well, they just say, oh, they don't have an accent at all. So I think that it is important to realize though that there's an accent everywhere you're from. If you talk, you speak the way you speak, that's an accent. So there's not one singular person on this planet who does not have an accent. And then I was also gonna ask though, was there ever a time when you lost an opportunity that you really wanted because of your accent?
Um, yes, in my field of being a salesperson or being a realtor, I I've lost clients that never met me. Okay. Uh, I I usually don't lose clients after we meet. Um, but if the introduction is over the phone and they didn't give me an opportunity to meet with them, um, sometimes it could be because of the way that I talk. Um, I tend to talk fast sometimes, as you may imagine with your interview here or with your discussion here. I am intentionally speaking slowly because I realize that when you when you have a foreign accent and you tend to speak fast, it's hard for other people to understand what I'm saying. So I've been learning how to actually speak slowly so that I can pick my words. And sometimes there are some words in there has a that I can't say in um, I can say everything in English, but there are some pronunciation which comes with my accent that doesn't sound like the way an American would, someone that is born in America would speak it. So I definitely have to pick my words. And so, yes, the answer is yes. I have lost cases. I have lost clients that never met with me.
Yeah, Dad, I wanted to say that it's really unfortunate that that happens, that people judge you before even meeting you or even knowing your character simply based on the way that you sound. And it's all based on context, you know, because people are used to hearing people that sound like themselves, whether you live in America or England or Nigeria or anywhere. But what you said earlier about your accent is something that I found interesting because as I was growing up, I never thought that you had an accent. I just felt as though you spoke normally because I mean you're my dad and I spoke normally, and obviously that has a lot to do with us being family. But it wasn't until I started um having like more friends in school meet you in person, like when you would come to an event or like a show or an after school activity, and then people would say, "Oh, Dapo, your dad has an accent," and I would say, "Really? I never noticed. I don't hear one. I don't like I wouldn't believe people when they would say that my dad had an accent because I just never felt as if it was there or as if I knew that there was one. But American people do have accents. Like for instance, I spent some time abroad last year in England, and when I was there, I'd meet people, and they'd automatically know that I was American, and they'd start poking fun of my accent and making fun of my accent. And to Americans, that's very uh, rare
Hmm.
and very very different because people in America assume that the way that they speak is correct and the way that they speak is right and that they don't have an accent. So I just think that it's an interesting perspective to have that's changed when you travel to other places and meet people who speak in different accents than you.
I completely agree. And when you brought up the England thing, it reminded me of when people there that I would meet would say things like, "Oh, why do you say water like it's water?" Or "Why do you call pants pants and not trousers?" Or different things like that. And obviously, I thought about it before because I'm like, well, that's just the way that everyone here speaks. And so I think it's like kind of like it wasn't like that big of a shock because obviously we have family from other countries who would say things like that before as like a joke. But for someone who maybe doesn't have those experiences, it definitely would be a shock when they go somewhere else and someone points out their American accent. So I definitely thought that was interesting. And then also with how you never looked at dad as if he had like a foreign accent. Definitely the same for me. Even now, I still feel like I'm hearing an American accent, but I don't know, maybe it's just in my head. But I always kind of thought that it was more like mom who still had like the stronger Nigerian accent. But I don't know. I guess obviously we can't really say too much about it because we're with them every day, and that's just kind of like what we've grown up hearing. So if anyone else hears anything, we wouldn't realize it. Because I've had friends who have said things like, "Oh, like your mom has such a strong accent," and I'm like, I don't think so, but like, but that's a friend who her parents are also from another country, who are also immigrants. So I was like, I feel like your mom has a really strong, and I couldn't understand what she was saying, and she was like, no, that's not true. So it kind of just depends, honestly, with how used you are to being how how used you are to being with someone. Yeah, and then like with how I was saying that with dad, I didn't feel like I really ever heard any accent. Like with mom was kind of like maybe, but I don't know. Anyways, though, moving on though. But dad, so whenever you go back to Nigeria, and I mean maybe maybe not, but at least to me, like how I was saying, your accent seems more accustomed to an American accent now. Do you face anything in Nigeria that's different because of your accent?
So that's a very good question, and I listened to both you and your brother um, said that you do not hear the accent. I know that I still do have the accent. It's there was one time in my life that I thought about taking an accent reduction class so that I can speak, like an American because I live in America. And with the kind of work that I do, I wanted to be able to fit in because sometimes with the accent, um, I feel like I don't fit in some cases. I don't have any self esteem about that. That's a fact. However, um, when I first meet people and just speak like they speak, that was way when I was younger. That was way when I was younger. But now I think I've embraced it. I think it is who I am, who I am. And when I go back to Nigeria, that is when I do realize that I speak differently. So um, when I'm in Nigeria, I try to speak just like they speak out in Nigeria because I do not want to stand out. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So, and the reason I do that is because when when they think I speak differently, they think, oh, he's from America, he's got money, we can take advantage of him. And I don't want to be the one that they will take advantage of. I mean, I lived in Nigeria for 19 years before I came here, and I know about all their tricks and what they think. So I try as much as possible to speak just like they speak. But then I realize I have to intentionally do that. Like I have to think about it and then I have to say it the way they would say it. Um, I would walk into a bank in Nigeria and I will forget myself and I will speak just like I'm speaking to you. And they will look at me and they will go, "You're not from here, are you?" And I don't like that. I really want to be known as someone that is from there, not someone that speaks differently from them. So the discrimination goes in both ways. In Nigeria, it enhances who I am, but at the same time, it could also be on the negative. If someone would usually charge, say for instance, when I have a project, I do have a project in Nigeria, and when I call people to come and uh, do some work at the house, when they realize that I'm not from there, their charges will be 3 or 4 times the amount they will charge the people that are from there. So I'm trying to fit in so that they don't overcharge me. Um, so in a way that could be negative, right? But in a way it could also be a good thing because when I walk into a bank and if I say something and I'm at the end of the line, like we have a queue, I'm at the end of the line, I would see the tellers calling me from the front. They'll be like, "Hey, excuse me, sir, you can come here, come here." And I'll be like, "No, I'm meant to be on the line." And many times when I finally get to the counter, they will tell me, "Oh no, we've been calling you to come to the front so we can help you so you don't have to stay on the line." And my answer is usually, "Why? Everybody else on the line, why do I have to jump the line?" And I think if I'm the type that wants to take advantage of that, I would say my accent actually enhanced um, my opportunities. But that's not who I am. So anyway, I'll stop there.
And and then also let me ask you this though. You said that sometimes you would like forget yourself when you're in Nigeria and not I guess not use that Nigerian accent as I don't know if deep would be the word, but would you say that when you speak the like when you speak Yoruba, do you feel like when you're speaking that language, do you think the accent comes easier than when you're speaking English and trying to have the Nigerian accent?
Oh yes, when I speak Yoruba, I sound very normal. But as Nigeria has quite three major languages and quite a lot of dialects,
Hmm.
and so you never know who understand Yoruba. If I'm speaking Yoruba, it's different. I can speak Yoruba very fluently, but when I have to speak in English, that's where the challenge comes.
I get that. Yeah,
Mhm.
with all those different ethnic groups and tribes and languages, definitely would be harder, like you said, to understand, or not to understand, but to see who would understand what you're saying and who wouldn't. And then
Yes.
also, though, I was gonna say that with the whole accent discrimination in general, wherever you are, whether it's in America or any other country that they're discriminating against you because of your accent, um, I would say for anyone who is going through that or experiencing it at all, definitely make sure that you don't just accept it and like fight back, like in a sense that you're making sure that you're making it clear and making it known that although you have your accent, that doesn't take away from your abilities or the things that you can do. And also the reason why a lot of people will maybe not hire you because of your accent or make it harder for you to have certain opportunities, that's truthfully just because um, they just want to stay comfortable. It's because they want to make sure that their work is going on to where they don't have to, I guess, listen harder to understand what you're saying with an accent. It's all about their comfort. So you should just remember that um, although you have people who will definitely discriminate against you, although it's illegal here in the US, um, it's just important to know that don't let it like take over what you know your abilities are and what you know your capabilities and what you know your capabilities are. So I just think it's
I like to actually say something about that.
Mhm.
I'd say that in terms of speaking and listening and conversating with people, I think that's a very active um, process on both parts. Obviously, for the speaker, because they're the one conveying the meaning and language through their what they're saying, but also listeners have a responsibility to try to understand what is being told to them and communicate whether or not they can't understand. The complacency that people feel with just listening and having it be easy on them, sort of like in a passive manner, without um, really trying, is something that shouldn't really be commonplace. I think that more people need to be more active in trying to understand people and trying to listen to people that may speak differently from them, in order to just be more open minded and broaden their uh, awareness. Uh, so I think that's important. And then also, Dad, with what you said about facing discrimination in America by being from Nigeria and then going back home to Nigeria and making sure that you're not um, seen as a foreigner for financial reasons to not be swindled. I think that that double-edged sword that you're experiencing can also be related to a lot of other people who may come from other countries and immigrate somewhere and live there for a long time and sort of assimilate to the culture somewhat and then return home and be treated differently. And for those people, there's almost an identity crisis at times where they feel as though they don't necessarily belong to this new country where they're staying and where they're living in, and they don't necessarily belong to the old country where they came from because they feel as though either that they have changed or the country has changed, and that can be a struggle, an internal struggle for people that isn't necessarily um talked about a lot or worked on. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, can I add something on to this to that resume if that's okay?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I, look, I we live in a world where we all have to coexist. You cannot live by yourself. Otherwise, God would have just made Adam and not Eve, and and all that. So, uh, because I know that we have to coexist and we have to, we're all cohabitants of this world. I have, when it comes to relationship, I've got two policies. One is for me not to be ignorant, to be able to listen to that person attentively, like to be present to them, to make them feel important, right? And
Yeah.
then the other part is I also believe that perception is reality. Whoever I'm talking to, whichever way they take what I've said, the way it landed on their end, it's also very important for me to address that. It's important for me to make it right. So even if my intention was to speak clearly and the way they received it was all jumbled up and they didn't understand what I said, it is my duty to actually express myself in a way where they would understand it. I have spelled things when I say it, and people say, I do not get that. I will spell it. I will go to any length so that they can understand what I'm saying. I do not fault people that do not understand me. As a matter of fact, I want to be better in communication so that when I speak, they can understand. So it goes both ways, and that's all I want to say. So we can also look at them as being ignorant, right? But that's on them. But for me, I am going to be as present as possible to anyone that either speaks like me or speak differently. At the same time, I am also going to be aware of that, of the perception of what I'm saying. How did they receive it? And that's all I want to say. I'm done.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that it's important to realize that if someone's okay, there's a difference between someone discriminating against you because of your accent and if they don't understand what you're saying. Difference between that and someone just genuinely not understanding what you're saying and they're saying it respectfully, like, I'm sorry, I don't understand you. Can you please repeat that? Or can you please try another way of relaying that message to me? So that's definitely okay with you trying to find another way or find another means for someone to understand what you're saying. But if they're like being rude about it and being disrespectful or disrespecting your culture or disrespecting your native language or your accent, your foreign accent in any way, then that wouldn't be okay compared to them just genuinely and honestly saying that they don't understand what you're saying. So I think that yeah, I like what you said though about trying to make it possible for them to understand you. I think that's important to do. And then I think with that it also reminded me of how I have a teacher who has tried to learn many different languages so that she's able to communicate with other people from other countries like Spanish and French and Dutch. And she does all of that so that when she goes to places where people maybe can't understand English, because we do have to remember that although so many people speak English, it's not like every single person understands it. It's a that just kind of reminded me of that, and I thought that was pretty interesting and honestly pretty amazing how she decided to challenge herself and learn these different languages so that she's able to communicate with others. So I definitely agree with what you said, and I think that this conversation in general has been very interesting, I would say, and I hope useful. I was able to um, create
All right, Darasima, thank you. Can I say something else?
yeah, of course.
All right, so I know this is not a psychology session. However, um, uh, and I heard what you said very loud and clearly that when someone is being rude about you, about your culture, and they're just, bluntly just disrespecting your culture, then you got to stand. You got to stand up. Um, if someone says, I don't understand you, or I don't understand your accent, or whichever way they say it, that's all I hear. Um, I my I usually respond by saying, "What can I do?" If I, after spelling it, writing it down, and doing all that, what can I do so that you will understand me? What can I do? In my head, that's what I'm thinking. What can I do so that this person would understand what I'm saying? And I do not take it as an insult. I do not take it as a disrespectful thing. Um, I just, I think the way I take it is all they said was they did not hear what I was saying, or they did not understand what I'm saying. That's all I hear. And I think it's important that we hear things and not read meaning to it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, Dara. So I'm not reading meaning to what they say. I just heard what they say, and that's all I'm taking away.
I understand what you're saying, but I think what I'm saying more, if they're like blatant not being respectful about it, which I understand you can't control other people's emotions, you can only control your own. So I guess it depends on the situation. I think for myself personally, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I also think it depends on the situation as well, and if they're actively trying to understand, other than or at least actively trying to get you to help them understand, rather than just being complacent with not understanding. Um, because there are certain ways that people can be subtly rude or disrespectful without necessarily saying what they mean, but it's implied. But at the same time, I think that in in a wide variety of cases, it's definitely just better to have both sides of speakers and listeners try to understand one another without having judgment or preconceptions about one another. That's just my perspective.
yeah, definitely. So this brings us to a close of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Definitely more episodes to come. Within the next week. No, no. Okay, sorry. After the 7th, there will be 2 episodes, sort of within the same week or within the same 3 day. Not the 7th. I meant the 9th. Sorry, within the same 2 day proximity. I guess that's the word. Yes. So we'll have episode 2 on April 9th, and then the 1 year anniversary special episode will be April 11th, which I'm really excited for and really excited to record, which I'll be recording later this week. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Thank you to my guests as well.
This has been a very great conversation. It totally stimulated my brain today. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Dara, for having me as well, and for having Dad on your podcast. This was definitely a very interesting topic, and I was able to even learn more about it. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah, of course. And I think I was able to learn more as well. And to all my viewers and listeners, I hope that you guys were able to gain some insight from this episode and were able to learn some new things as well. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
And that's the gist. See you guys next Saturday.